Okay, so now that we've gone through and looked at how we would approach each of these problems using the table, all right, I'm going to go back and show you the equivalent using the normal calculator in StatCrunch. And the main thing about using the normal calculator in StatCrunch is you have to make sure that you have the proper standard deviation, and you have to make sure that you're putting things in the right boxes based on whether it's a data value or an area. Okay, so in this first one that we worked, we were looking for a probability that a bill was more than $115. All right, so if I were going to look at this in StatCrunch, right, I would go to my stat calculators, all right, and pull up the normal distribution. Right now, when I'm looking at my normal distribution, the first thing I want to do is make sure that I have the proper mean and standard deviation. If you're working in terms of z, you leave these 0 and 1. But if not, right, you want to make sure that you input your mean and your standard deviation. That was 112 for us on these bill amounts. Then what you want to do is make sure if you're putting in a data value, like $115, that's a bill amount, that goes in your data value box here, your X box essentially, and you want to make sure that you have the proper direction, right? We wanted more than 115 area right, so we changed that to greater than. And notice right over here in my area box, right, the probability is showing at 0.1056, which is the same thing that we got when using our table. Okay, so I just want to make sure I put it in the right box and make sure that I have the direction correct as far as if it's less than or greater than. All right, and don't forget, if you're doing a between, right, you just click that between button up at the top there, and you can enter two data values instead of one. All right, now, in the second example that we did, we were still looking for a probability, right? We still had a data value, right? A bill amount of $96, but we were looking at a sample mean. And what that did is it changed our standard deviation. So when I go to look at a sample mean here, right, I recalculated my standard deviation at 2.0284. So that means if I'm going to use my normal calculator, I've got to change that standard deviation here as well to make sure that I'm looking at sample means, not individual values. Okay, once I do that, I've changed it to a sample mean, and then I just put in, I want to go less than, because I'm doing area left, a value of $96. So data value goes here in my data value box. Less than to the left, put in the proper standard deviation. All right, I hit compute here. I'm getting 0.0243 versus 0.0244 from the table. Little bit of discrepancy just because of the rounding of z, right? But other than that, exactly the same thing that I'm doing. Okay, so again, you got a data value, put it in the X box. Make sure that your left or right is correct, or between, if you need to switch between, and make sure that you have the proper standard deviation if you're doing a sample mean. All right, now, if I'm looking at a data value, that means I'm given an area. And when I'm given an area, I gotta make sure that I put it in the area box. So in this case, right, the first thing that I would do again is make sure that I've got my mean and my standard deviation. So we're back to just looking at individual bills. Mean is 100, standard deviation is 12. But this time I'm looking for the bill amount. I don't know that, so I'm gonna leave that box empty. What I know is that the area to the left, that's less than, is 0.80. So areas go in this box over here, right? This is my area box. I'm gonna make sure that I have the direction right? Percentiles are always left, they're always less than. And when I hit compute, right, notice right there, if I round that to 2 decimal places, I'd be looking at $110.10. Again, slight difference in the last two decimal places because of the rounding of Z in the table, right? But other than that, exactly the same thing. So I just got to make sure if I'm putting in an area, just like when I go to my table, I have to look inside the table. If I'm putting in an area in the normal calculator, I got to make sure I put it in the area box. Right? And then similarly with this last one, the main thing about this last one is that it gave us a top area, right? An area to the right. And we just want to remember that if we're putting in an area to the right, then we're looking at a value greater than. All right, so if I want to put in a top 10%, then what I'm going to do, again, leave the data value blank, change this to greater than, that way it's doing to the right, top. And then the area, the top area, 10%, goes in the area box. All right, and again, slight little rounding difference, right? This comes up $115.38 versus $115.36. That's just because the table rounds Z. Okay, but other than that, exactly the same thing using the normal calculator in StatCrunch. So, the big thing with using the calculator is make sure you don't get confused on where to put things, and make sure that you're always looking at the proper direction, left or right, as well as the standard deviation. All right, and then one last note, I didn't have this in the review problems, but you can use the normal calculator even if you're given an area in between. So let's say we wanted to look at like the middle 50%. We could come in here, go to the between calculator, come over here to our area box, put in an area between, like middle 50%, and it would actually compute two values, right? 91.91 and 108.09. So keep it in mind too, you can even use it for a between area if you're given a middle percentage versus a bottom or a top. All right, so what you want to do, first thing, complete your homework. All right, any homework that you still need to complete, including 5.3, get that done first, sooner rather than later, and email me with any questions that you come across. Then you need to use those review tools that are posted on the announcements page in My Lab, the study plan, the review homework assignment, and the practice test. They don't affect your grade in any way. They have unlimited attempts. The more you can work these, the more prepared you're going to be, and make sure for every single one you're noting if you're asked for a probability, an area, or a data value to be sure that you approach it the right way, whether you're using the table or using StatCrunch.